So we know that an old water heater is definitely something to replace, beforehand because it can cause so much damage. What other stuff do you think comes up that a seller should definitely fix up front versus stuff that they shouldn't spend their money on?
AC. So often we will come in with the buyer as the buyer's inspector and check the AC and find that it's not cooling adequately. What's the next thing they do? They get an HVAC contractor out there and says, oh, this thing's shot. You need a $15,000 system. And we need new duct work and blah, blah, blah. And it's crazy. It just blows this thing out of proportion right at the 11th hour. Whereas if the seller had us come in and we found it wasn't cooling properly, very likely that system just needs a tune-up. And you get it tuned up, pay a couple $100 to get it serviced. It is going to run adequately during the buyer's inspection, give the buyers a home warranty so they're covered, but you're going to spend a couple $100 servicing your AC rather than being asked for $15,000 at the 11th hour of escrow and kind of being held over a barrel like you want to sell your house or not. And as Jeremy said, now that follows the house. So the next buyer is going to know that this AC wasn't any good. So that's one of the biggest, most common benefits of having a pre-listing inspection right there. Could save literally $10,000 to $15,000.
Okay. I love that.
So we know that typically, in a very competitive market, people will say, we won't ask for any other repairs except for health and safety. Can we go over what some of those health and safety items are and how a seller can, outside of a pre-listing inspection, because I think we've determined that those are very valuable now. How can you figure out if you've got mold potentially or whatever other health and safety?
It's so vague, right? So how can we distinguish this?
Yeah. Well, I'll talk about what we look for and I'll have Jeremy address what can be done about them. So with our inspections, we do a visual mold assessment, which really it's all about moisture. Mold follows moisture. It could be bad ventilation in a house, an improperly balanced AC system, or leaks in a home. So our guys are looking for this or even drainage and irrigation problems that could affect the house. So we're looking for issues like that. You can't really determine the presence or absence of mold without doing some testing. And that is an extra fee because it's a different skill set, lab fees, different equipment that we go through. So you can do air sampling to see if there is mold in a home. But probably the most common thing we see are leaking ice maker lines behind the fridge and no one knows about it. It's just dripping away and not enough to see it on the floor, but you pull that fridge out on moving day and boom, mold all over behind the cabinets. It's a mess. Reverse osmosis system. What's that?
So pull your fridge out, check, walls
behind it.
Maybe had, under cabinets and bathrooms and stuff like that, and look for those rings of color if you never had a drip.
Literally get down on a knee and look under your sinks periodically. Your kitchen, next to your dishwasher, pull the fridge out a little bit and look back there like a home inspector would. It's big stuff. So Jeremy, when we find something like that and they ask you for repair, like what are you seeing when you go out there?
Yeah, so typically what the home inspection report will say is we can't learn more without doing more destructive damage. So what we'll offer is we will open up this area and see what's there and repair anything in the immediate area, dry it out, repair and patch it. What we don't offer is to confirm there's absolutely no mold in the air or anything like that because it's a different thing, right? But what we can do is make sure that we'll often see one that we've done a bunch of times now is kind of next to the shower behind the toilet, the baseboard is swelling and it looks bad. And so people may think that there's a leak behind that wall because there is an angle stop and some plumbing there, but more often than not, it's because the shower's not sealed properly and it's just a little bit dripping out every time someone showers. But sometimes we open that up and it's been going on long enough or bad enough, or there's showers getting that much use that the sill plate on the, in the inside of the wall there, it's rotten and it does need to be replaced. Other cases where you can open it up and it just needs to be dried out. Maybe you put the kills in there, repair it, patch it, and then it goes away and, we test it, make sure that it doesn't have any moisture there anymore. And then that is complete. And it's, going to be way less than any other remediation company coming out, number one, or having to deal with it and, at the wrong time through the repair request and, potentially big credit or something going back to the buyer.
Yeah, because you don't want the buyers ever thinking, oh my gosh, there's a mold problem. We need testing. We need ServPro out there to, create a $20,000 repair when it might be couple,
Hundreds.
Charge
yeah,
$5,000.
hundreds, so less than
Yeah.
$1,500. So those are some of the big things that we see in a pre-listing inspection can help sellers avoid the upset and the cost associated with letting those go and letting them be revealed by the buyer.
Okay. Now on the flip side, cosmetic. What things have you guys seen, or are there more things, maybe Jeremy, that you take care of that are like filling in grout here and there, or repainting something? And maybe Alyssa, you can shed some light on this too, having advised many sellers in the past, changing carpet prior to listing. What are some things that a seller can do maybe without hiring somebody that can add massive value just for presentation?
Yeah, I mean, painting, I think, is probably the cheapest way to make anything look better, whether it's
I
out
agree.
a car or anything, right? And another one that's really easy to do is replace carpet. Some places, I think it's Home Depot, even they'll offer like free install. They'll send out somebody to install it. You go in, you pick out a basic carpet, a basic pad, and they'll come out, they'll do the measuring, they'll do the install, and it's relatively minimal cost to redo the carpeted areas in your home. And those things are going to make a big difference just by themselves, right?
Is that something you guys do and defer the cost to close of escrow?
Yeah, and we can certainly do that. We'll definitely do paint. It depends on how difficult it might be. What kind of there's a little bit of art to where do you stop remodeling a home process, right? So a lot of people want to have their cabinets painted. I think that's the trick, because probably TV shows and things like that. But we've got the ability to install new cabinets and have them be modern looking for almost the same price as it is to take everything down and prepare the area to spray paint or to paint a cabinet, make it look right. It's almost the same cost in a lot of cases, depending on the home and other things that may need to be fixed. And then vinyl floors is another, relatively low cost way to give something a really nice look.
And they're nice now.
Yeah.
Like they're not the cheap vinyl that your grandma had in her kitchen.
Yeah,
They're beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the luxury vinyls, that's my favorite.
Absolutely.
Nice. Any other questions for these guys, Alyssa?
I think that you guys kind of touched on foundation issues as being a huge thing, water intrusion, cast iron. The last thing that I run into frequently is I feel like the roof is always like, it's not my problem. Like, nope, there's definitely life left on this baby. I'm going to get out before it's done. And then buyers always want, they don't want to replace a roof right after they move in. Do you guys have any suggestions on where we draw the line on when it's fair to expect some compensation for a roof?
And there's some generalities, just like a water heater, about the the life expectancy of a roof. I'm out in Ramona where it's hot and dry. We get a lot more sun than perhaps along the coast, obviously. And so asphalt shingle roofs aren't going to last as long. The underlayment's not going to last as long out here as it does in the cooler parts of the county. So we can generalize based on the age. Is a house that was built in the 80s and the underlayment's over 35 years old, you're probably looking at, even if it's a tile roof, the tiles may not need to be replaced, but it's called a lift and lay, where they lift up the tiles, stack them up.
Just like San Marcos.
You've gone through that before?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just as expensive as replacing a whole roof.
It almost is. And at that point, you're like, well, you might as well put new tile on because the glaze is worn off. Anyway, roofs are expensive. So we can kind of, even if it's not leaking, and we look for evidence of leaking, stains, discoloration, obvious damage, cracked tiles, missing the aggregate, the granular material. It looks like kitty litter on an asphalt shingle roof. If that's all worn and it's sitting in the rain gutters, we know that this roof is near the end of its life. So, it's hard to negotiate what that's worth if the roof isn't actually leaking, but it's certainly good for the buyer to know that they need to budget for a new roof in the next couple of years.
Got it.
Yeah,
Should a seller go ahead?
Yeah, I was gonna say, from our standpoint, sometimes we'll do a roof certification. That isn't necessarily, there's a fee for the roof certification, but it includes doing all the repairs that need to be done for the roofer to certify it. So,
right.
often that is something you'll get out of with maybe, $1,000, $1,200, something like that, where things
That's usually what,
resealed.
2-year kind of
Yeah, right.
Band-Aid-ish.
Yeah, so things will get resealed, and tiles get replaced if they're cracked, or put back in place if they've slipped, and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And it's hard out here because it is so dry. We have such long dry spells, and then when we get rain, it's heavy and wind driven, and roofs that never leaked before. It's like, I don't understand why it's leaking now. Well, anything wears out, and with the right conditions, houses are not waterproof, and they're made to shed water. So with the right conditions, water can get in for sure.
And I think that's a great kind of happy medium suggestion. If you're a seller and your roof is getting on the older end, get it certified before you list it. That way you can say, hey, you're going to get at least 2-3 years out of this thing. Here's a certification. And then you can kind of pass it along the line without feeling like you're screwing the next person.
Exactly.
Totally. So I think we've come to the conclusion that a pre-inspection is very valuable. What are the costs typically associated with a pre-inspection?
It's like all inspections, it's based on the type of structure. Is it a condo? Is it, townhouse, single family, the size, and are there any ancillary structures that need to be inspected, like pools and guest houses or barns, all sorts of things that can be on the property as well, granny flats, things like that. But you're looking at, for the typical house in San Diego, a pre-listing inspection starts at just under $500 for the basics. Then there's, sewer scopes. There's, like I said, swimming pools. There's some other things that we can do as well. Mold testing, if you want to do indoor air quality, it can, build on that just like any service. But otherwise, it's essentially the same as a purchase inspection.
Okay.
Is there any way for the seller to get that cost recouped and maybe have the buyer have the option to assume that inspection, if you will?
Yeah, so we will transfer it to a buyer if it's within a certain window, like 60 days, because everything in house ages. So we don't want to have a report out there that we're saying, here's the condition of the house, but it's been 6 months and things have changed. Yeah. So we can transfer it to a buyer, and if they want to meet with the inspector out there, we do charge a trip fee. It's much less than the home inspection fee, and the inspector can go out, meet them on site, and go over the findings and just make sure everything's the same as when they first looked at it. But we do, obviously we have to pay our inspectors, so there is a fee for that to go out there and spend that time with the new buyer.
Cool. And what is that fee approximately?
It can range from $150 to $275. It just depends on the scope of the inspection and how much time they're going to spend out there.
Cool. But now the buyer can use that report for a discounted cost.
Yep. Exactly. It's a discounted inspection report, so they save a lot of money.
Very cool.
And
what about your services?
Oh.
Sorry, go ahead, Nicole.
You go.
Oh, I was going to say, what about your services, Jeremy? What are the costs associated?
So at the moment, we don't charge anything for the quote. All you have to do is come to our platform. It takes about a minute to make an account, and then you just upload your home inspection and your repair request. And within 24 hours, we've got a very detailed quote that comes back to you. And then right in that platform, you can pay a number of different ways, including send it off to escrow if you're on the selling side of it, or even if you're the agent. Some of the agents are gifting small stuff to their buyers as a part of the process, and that's coming out of escrow as well.
And one of the things he touched on there, I want to make sure to elaborate on that. He will provide estimates for the things on the request for repairs, not just a mind-boggling estimate for every single thing that's in the inspection report. Because as we know, first of all, that stuff's never paid for, not 100%. There's half a dozen, maybe it's only 3 items that you really want to ask the sellers to address. And what's nice is that Jeremy will give you estimates, and it keeps it in perspective, because your buyers get an estimate for $45,000, they're going to freak. And so by keeping it to just those things that are really important and that they want, it makes a huge difference in not just blowing your deal right out of the water.
Yeah, and I think buyers do have to be cognizant that I've never found a perfect house. Have you, Philippe? Anybody?
Never.
There is no perfect house. There's going to be something.
You still have your issues.
It's like there's no perfect people, you can't find. So there's no perfect house. There's always going to be little issues in the house. You want to focus on the main things. And what I found is when people ask for thing on, the seller's going to agree to the smallest stuff. Am I frozen?
Yeah, you were a little frozen for a second.
Sorry, I was getting a call. But if you ask for everything, the seller's only going to agree to the cheap stuff and then try to skip the big stuff. So really focus on the items that you want.
Sweet. And how can people get a hold of each of you? Either of you, both of you, all of you?
I'm just at Jeremy at the Quick Fix. So JEREMY, and then Quick Fix is THE Quick QWIKFIX.
You just really confused me. It's really hard, man.
We'll have to post it maybe.
English, man.
We'll add the link. Yes.
There's one more thing I wanted to touch on for sellers in particular, since that's the main topic here. Sellers are the only party in the transaction that have no protection in the deal. And by protection, I mean insurance. I've got insurance, realtors have insurance, pretty much everybody, the appraisers, everybody's got insurance in the deal except for the sellers. And what happens, and hopefully you've never been involved in this, but if a lawsuit arises after the close of escrow, even a couple years later, the seller is exposed. They don't have E&O or anything similar. There is a new product that we have begun to offer to sellers, which is like prepaid legal. It's called Seller Shield. And they can purchase this, or some realtors are actually purchasing it for their clients in lieu of another closing gift. For just a few $100, this provides up to $20,000 in legal representation to a seller if they get a demand letter in the years following the close of escrow. So the statute is about 3 years that they're liable. And so sellers can buy it in 1, 2, or 3 year blocks. And, if they get a demand letter from an angry buyer saying, you didn't tell me about this issue, you failed to disclose it, now I want all this money, you just hand that off to an attorney, and they will hook you up with an attorney and defend you up to $20,000. So it's something else that's kind of interesting, and you can read about that on our website. So it's pretty cool, though.
And what's the cost of that protection?
I'm sorry?
What was the cost of that protection?
It starts at $299 for 1 year, and then $399 and $499 for years 2 and 3. Total, not
Very cool. Yeah,
2 years. It's $499. So it's really cheap. I mean,
that's awesome.
If you've ever had to hire an attorney, you got to write them a big check just as a retainer to read a letter. They're going to charge you a lot for it. So this way, there's no deductible or anything. You just send that letter over to them, and they take care of it. So to get a hold of me, Philippe Heller, and our website is sdinspect.com. And to email me directly, it's my first initial last name, so PHELLER@sdinspect.com.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, guys. We learned a lot today. We're so appreciative of having you guys on.
Thank you.
As always, everybody watching this, please like, comment, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. We've got some more videos coming your way here soon, and we really appreciate you guys watching.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.